Yes, Your Honor.
Problem is these rules that I'm supposed to read are rules from when we did it live. So I'm trying to get through them here. Just remember, folks, you're not going to be able to do real recesses, but since we're on WebEx and you're not going to be talking, it's probably not going to matter as much. Is there anybody that recognizes, if you can check the participants, is there anybody that knows anyone else that's participating in this? Do you know any of the scoring panelists? Do any of the scoring panelists know any of the participants?
Could we have them turn on their cameras so we can see them?
All right.
Please. No conflicts for me.
No conflicts for me, Your Honor.
Ms. Greer?
No conflicts, Your Honor.
Guess I should do the same. Although I don't know anybody, so. All right, that looks like we're good here too. All right. Mr. Hirsch, I think we have to wait and make sure that there's no conflicts with other teams before we get started.
I believe that's correct, Your Honor.
All right, and who's running this who's the monitor that's gonna talk to us? Who's acting as the monitor? Is the monitor on? That's great.
They've got a screen, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah, if you're the monitor, just let us know if there's a conflict. Otherwise, we're going to get started, or if we should still wait.
Your Honor, I'm going to go ahead and text Heather and Kim and let them know we're good to go. Is that all right?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm having some problems opening up the prosecution's roster.
Yeah.
I am.
We already talked about that, and Mr. Hirsch was having problems too. What we're going to do is the name at the bottom is going to be the name of the individual. Okay, so you're not going to get a list.
You're talking about the right.
And then as far as when they're a witness, they're going to have their birth name or their real name, and then after it, they're going to put the name of the witness they're representing.
It looks like they've already done that. So
yeah, they're kids. They're faster than us. While you're doing that, Mr. Hirsch, what I'm going to do is go through the preliminary stuff with them and get us right to where we can get started with openings.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Teams, you're reminded that any disputes arising out of the competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. You must comply with the time requirements and they will be considered in scoring. Please stick to them. The reason we're starting at 6 instead of 4 is because of some problems with timing. So let's try to make sure we do that. There aren't any coaches or other team members that are in the virtual courtroom? I don't think I see any. And Ms. Blair, since you're the prosecution, why don't you go ahead and state your name and just state the names of all your team members. If you are on team B, please keep your videos up. If you're on team G, take your videos down for just a sec so we can go through and introduce team B. Ms. Blair, go ahead.
Your Honor, would you like us to individually introduce ourselves?
That would probably actually be better because then you'll pop up for me.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Kate Blair. I will be performing the opening statement for the prosecution, along with the direct exam of Alex Fuentes and the cross exam of Blake Van Owen.
All right, Team B, speak up.
Good morning, good evening, Your Honor. My name is Sadie Fitzpatrick, and I will be doing the direct of Kuzak and the cross of Taylor Perkins.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Emily Simon. I will be serving as a prosecution lawyer and doing the direct of Markowitz and the cross-examination of Avery Becker, along with providing a closing statement at the end of the trial.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Franklin Young, and I'm Jordan Markowitz, the witness.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Sevilla Montoya, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Lee Waxter, and I am Alex Fuentes.
Thank you. And now if you guys can go ahead and darken your screens, and let's have the Team G, the defense.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Grace Murphy, and my co-counsel and I represent the defendant, Avery Becker, in today's case. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves?
Please.
My name is Lola Fakes.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Tess Hayden.
Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Certainly.
Good evening. My name is Lily Humber, and I am Professor Blake Van Owen.
Good evening. My name is Saffron Bennett Spurlock, and I'm Avery Becker.
Good evening. My name is Alexandra May, and I am Taylor Perkins.
All right. All right, it looks like we got the green light to start. I'm going to go ahead and swear all the team members in. If you can all raise your right hand. I don't know if you can see my hand here. Let me back up a little. Team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can all say, I do.
I do.
I do.
All right.
I do.
And then witnesses, if you can all raise your right hands. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
I do.
I do.
All right. And so you guys know, I usually will swear you in again when you get on the stand. So don't be surprised by that. I usually do that, and I want to keep up that tradition. All right, scoring panelists. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
All right, thank you all very much. Are there any matters, procedural matters or pretrial matters that we need to handle before we begin opening statements? Ms.
Your
Blair?
Honor, yes, this prosecution has a series of preliminary matters.
All right, go ahead, Ms. Blair.
Your Honor, we reserve time for rebuttal closing. We also have a series of stipulated facts that we ask be submitted to the court. Your Honor, we also ask that the witnesses be introduced with their preferred pronouns when they're asked to take the stand.
Certainly. And as far as the exhibits, you can go ahead and we can do it one of two ways. You can post them on a share screen if you want to do it that way. And we can just assume that it hasn't been admitted or shown to the jury until I've allowed it in as evidence. Okay. Ms. Murphy, did you have any pretrial motions?
We only have one, Your Honor. Would it be possible for the timekeepers to pause their watches when we are in the process of sharing an exhibit?
No.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. Let's go ahead and get started with the trial. Does the prosecution wish to make an opening statement at this time?
We do, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready to proceed.
That'll show him. It is the morning of March 6, 2020. Mackenzie Brackman wakes up, puts on a Keep Calm and Mock On t-shirt, and heads downstairs. This afternoon, he will be preparing for mock trial practice at Colorado High School. His inbox is full of mock trial emails. This is not his job, though. He is a successful attorney, yet he still volunteers his time at his local high school. Tonight, he will head to Colorado High School to teach mock trial students who sometimes get a little heated, but always come out on top. Mackenzie Brackman is sitting in his dining room. Behind him, his kitchen. Next to him, his living room. This is Mackenzie Brackman's home. He lives alone, no family in the house, not even a dog. His house is always quiet, except for the noise of him typing in preparation for the next mock trial tournament, or the occasional neighbor saying hello. On Mackenzie Brackman's front door, he has a Ring video doorbell. It tells him when packages arrive, which friends are at the door on game night, what animals are passing by, and anything else that is the culprits of the movement turning on the motion sensor cameras. A person is now approaching Mackenzie Brackman's front door. This person is not recognizable to Mackenzie Brackman. Maybe it's because they are wearing a mask. An old Halloween mask, maybe? Mackenzie Brackman doesn't know what to do. Does he attempt to hide? Does he attempt to talk to the person? What is this person here for? Brackman, amidst a panic, goes to the kitchen in hopes of finding a knife. This masked person, though, is a mock trial student just here to take revenge after being kicked off of Mackenzie Brackman's team. This masked person, this is Avery Becker. Avery Becker was kicked off of Mackenzie Brackman's mock trial team. So, in retaliation, in her own words, she was going to trash his house. Avery tries the front door. Locked. This is where the motion sensor cameras are activated. Avery is now headed to the back doors. They open. Inside these doors is a Mackenzie Brackman holding a knife in fear of this masked perpetrator. As soon as Avery enters the door, they are met with Mackenzie Brackman holding a knife. They are fighting, trying to gain control, trying to gain leverage over the other person. They are fighting, scuffing up the floor, just trying not to get stabbed. The struggle has now moved to the dining room. Avery Becker is slowly gaining the upper hand until finally she has control of the knife. As Brackman slowly constrains Avery Becker, Avery Becker reaches over and stabs Brackman in the back. This was not part of the plan. Mackenzie Brackman is now laying there with a knife in his back. He is just trying to reach his door. He's trying to get help. He lays there with a knife in his back. He reaches behind him and pulls up his knife. This seems like a logical decision, yet it was the decision that caused him to bleed out rapidly. He lays there, lifeless, blood staining his shirt, his front door cracked open, and his own knife laying next to him. After March 6, 2020, the lives of everyone who knew Mackenzie Brackman would be forever changed. That'll show him. This is what Avery Becker said in text messages to Alex Fuentes, a popular defense attorney and someone who volunteered their time for the next generation of lawyers. He is no longer here. Avery Becker said that they would show him, and they most certainly did. So now we ask you to please hold them responsible for their actions. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Does the defense wish to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. No phones, no files, no felony. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Lola Fakes, and my co-counsel and I are here today to represent Ms. Avery Becker. Ms. Becker stands here today falsely accused of second-degree burglary of a dwelling and murder in the first degree. The prosecution accused Avery Becker of the murder of Mackenzie Brackman before their investigation began. They looked into no other leads or suspects, and the incomplete evidence they will present today will clearly reflect that. The case the prosecution will offer is unfinished. The prosecution will call 3 witnesses to the stand. They will call Alex Fuentes. Alex, the prosecution's only character witness, is a fellow mock trial student, jealous of Avery's recognition on the mock trial team. You will hear that Alex was the last person to see and use Avery's phone on March 5th, the day before the murder, the same night Avery's phone went missing. Alex claims to have a text conversation with Avery about her planning to go to Mr. Brackman's house. You will also hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, who will explain that he accepted these screenshots of this purported text exchange directly from Alex with no attempts to verify their authenticity. None. You will hear that cell tower data collected by Markowitz on Avery's phone the day of the murder cannot tell us where Avery's phone was that day, as phones do not always connect to the tower closest to them. Then Owen, a crime scene investigator on the defense, will explain that phones commonly connect to cell towers up to 7 miles away, meaning a phone in downtown Denver could connect to a tower in Stapleton. While the data may give us a picture of the phone's location the day of the murder, it can tell us nothing of the location of Avery Becker on the day of Mr. Brackman's murder. You will hear that Detective Markowitz has failed to locate Avery's phone. Detective Markowitz has failed to reach Alex's phone to authenticate the supposed text messages. The detective has also failed to reach the phone that could confirm or deny their lead suspect's alibi, Taylor Perkins' phone, as Taylor was with Avery on the day of the murder. Where is Avery's phone? Where is Alex's phone? And where is Taylor's phone? All untouched by the police and not in court today. Kyle Kuzak will also come to the stand. Kuzak, a civilian worker on the police force, will try to reconstruct the scene for the court, but will fail to do so properly. Kuzak visited the scene after it was processed by Detective Markowitz, using only the evidence that Detective Markowitz collected, following his leads. Additionally, the police allowed important picture evidence to be corrupted, making it unavailable to the court today. This is just another example of the unacceptable incompetence of the police work on this case. The defense will bring to the stand Van Owen, a crime scene investigator. Ms. Van Owen will help highlight the failings of the investigation. She will explain the ridiculous reconstruction of the scene, of scuff marks that cannot be dated, of ring notifications that were never checked, and the impossibility of a teenager of Avery's stature to reach the knife wound found on a grown man's shoulder. You will hear from the defendant herself, Avery Becker, who will clearly explain to you that she, a teenager with a loose connection to Mr. Brackman, is not the criminal they are looking for. Lastly, you will hear from Taylor Perkins, Avery's alibi, who will fully corroborate the whereabouts of Avery on the day of Brackman's murder, making it ever more clear that Avery had absolutely nothing to do with this crime. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mackenzie Brackman was a criminal defense attorney, a job that will naturally provide you with enemies, yet Detective Markowitz will fail to acknowledge any other suspects in this case. Taylor Perkins will bring your attention to Blair Rollins, a fellow mock trial student, whose father was put into jail. And who was his lawyer? Mackenzie Brackman. You will hear that Blair Rollins was not at school the day of Brackman's murder. You will also hear that Blair Rollins has recently disappeared. You will not hear of any investigation on Blair Rollins by the police. No phones, no files, no felonies. The prosecution found only the evidence that supported their claims and ignored to look into any other leads, theories, or pieces of evidence that would contradict their choice of suspect, Avery Becker. The investigation on Mackenzie Brackman's murder is lazy. I will remind you, the prosecution holds the entire burden of proof in this case. I ask the jury to keep in mind, the prosecution must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. It is your job to ask yourself through every moment of testimony today if there is any reasonable doubt. I ask that you remember what the prosecution is missing from their case. No phones, no files, and there can be no felony, and find my client, Avery Becker, not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Is the prosecution ready to call their first witness?
Your Honor, we are. We call to the stand Jordan Markowitz.
All right, Mr. Markowitz, can you go ahead and raise your right hand, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Counsel, you may begin when you're ready.
Hello, Detective Markowitz. Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes. Hello, my name is Jordan Markowitz. I work for the Denver Police Department.
And Detective Markowitz, what do you do for the police department?
I'm a homicide detective with specialized training and experience in cell phones.
And how long would you say you've worked there?
I started my career with the DPD roughly 13 years ago, and I've been a detective for 7 of those years.
As you mentioned previously, you have a specialized cellular training. Could you tell the jury more about what that means?
Sure. I have a forensic data recovery and cell phone technology certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
I now submit Detective Markowitz as an expert in homicide investigation and cellular forensics.
Any objection?
No objection at this time, Your Honor. I'll address the shortcomings of this witness's investigation on cross.
He shall be so qualified.
Would you say this training has come in use often?
Yeah, I use this training constantly as a detective. I've downloaded the contents of hundreds of phones.
Okay, moving to the crime in question. Detective Markowitz, when did you receive Mr. Brackman's case?
I was assigned to investigate the death of Mackenzie Brackman in March 2020.
And when were you first alerted of the death of Mr. Brackman?
A passing motorist reported seeing a person passed out at residence 444 South Flower Street. I responded around 2:20.
And when you arrived on scene, what did you first see?
The front door was open and the victim was face down just inside the residence in a large pool of blood. A knife wound is visible on his upper left back shoulder area, and I can see a large knife on the floor just past the body. I also noticed that there was a Ring doorbell for the residence.
Upon seeing the doorbell, what did you do next?
I observed 2 more Ring cameras, one aimed at the backyard gate and the other at the back door. I entered the residence through the back door, which took me into the kitchen.
As you walked through the house, what else did you observe?
Next to the kitchen, there was a dining area with tables and chairs, table and chair. One of the chairs was knocked over and I observed a broken plate on the floor, as well as scuff marks and several small drops of blood.
May I now direct your attention to exhibits 5, 9, and 18? Your Honor, permission to screen share as I lay foundation?
Certainly.
Detective Markowitz, what are these images?
Well, exhibit 5 is a image of the knife used to stab Brackman. Exhibit 9 is the shattered plate on the floor. Exhibit 18 are the scuff marks on the floor of the house.
Now, Detective Markowitz, are these images, do you know when these images were taken?
Yeah, they were taken on the day of the crime.
And do you know where these images were taken?
Yeah, they were taken at Mackenzie Brackman's home, or at the scene of the crime.
And were these accurate images of what you observed personally while on the crime scene?
Yes, these are accurate images.
Your Honor, we now move to admit exhibits 5, 9, and 18.
Any objection?
Only to exhibit 5, Your Honor. I object to exhibit 5 as I see that the prejudicial weight of this exhibit far outweighs the probative value.
All right. Any response, Ms. Simon?
It's valuable for forensic information in further future directs.
All right. Your objection will be overruled. Exhibit 5 shall be admitted.
All right. Detective Markowitz, would you say everything you've done up to this point is standard?
Yeah, I've seen many cases similar, so the procedures I've described and will describe as I did them have been standard.
Based on the information available at the scene, what conclusions did you draw?
It seemed that the victim had found somebody breaking into his house and had likely confronted this intruder with a large knife from the kitchen. The intruder must have gotten control of the knife and then stabbed the victim. It appears that the victim then went to the front door after being stabbed, either running from or after the intruder.
Okay, Detective Markowitz, after you left the scene, what further action did you take?
I downloaded the information from Brackman's phone, so I got access to his account, his Ring account. So I was able to see everything that the cameras had recorded on March 6th.
After viewing that, what else did you do to further find out about the investigation?
I downloaded the rest of the contents and I found out that he was a high school mock trial coach for Colorado High School. I spoke with a student named Alex Fuentes who told me that another student on the team had texted something about a plan to vandalize Coach Brackman's house.
When you found out this information from Mr. Fuentes, then what occurred?
I had Alex and his parents come to headquarters to conduct a full interview. Turned out that the other student was named Avery Becker, and she had recently been kicked off the mock trial team because she vandalized Coach Brackman's car.
And when you asked him further, what did he claim happened between the two?
Avery sent a text to Alex pleading for help getting back.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Sorry, Your Honor, I think you were muted. Did you say something?
Response.
Rule 703, experts can rely on hearsay testimony if pertaining in common to their field of expertise.
Ms. Hayden?
Your Honor, actually 703 states that an expert may base their expert opinion on inadmissible evidence, but that does not mean that they can bring it into court.
Ms. Simon?
We have not attempted to bring in any admissible evidence. We are having him discuss what he feels about the receiving of the information.
Restate your question.
Okay. And when you interviewed him, what did he claim happened between him and Avery?
He claimed that Avery.
Hold on.
Sorry.
That's sustained. Go ahead. Move on.
Okay. Now, Detective Markowitz, is it common to have evidence in the form of screenshots?
Definitely. This might have been the only time I've encountered a teenager who didn't have their phone on them, but people can be very stressed meeting with the police, and it can make them act different from how they normally would.
After seeing those messages, did you reach out to Ms. Becker?
Of course. I contacted Avery Becker immediately, and I arranged for her to come down for an interview. But just before we were supposed to meet, her attorney informed me that she would not be making any appearances. I'd even obtained a warrant to search Becker's cell phone, but I learned that she had supposedly lost the phone on March 5th.
Once you knew the phone was gone, what other means did you pursue to try to find out more?
I was provided with the phone number for Avery's phone, so I got a court order to obtain the call detail records for March 6th.
Now, Detective Markowitz, could you please tell the jury exactly what CDRs are?
Sure. So a cell phone constantly reaches out to find cell towers it can communicate with, even when the phone's not in use. So when you place or receive a call, or you send or receive a text message, a record of that interaction is created, and that's known as a call detail record, or CDR.
So could you tell the jury how CDRs are relevant to Mr. Brackman's case?
Sure. So the record will show things like the date and time of the communication, whether there's incoming, outgoing, the other phone involved, whether there's a call or a message, and if it was a call, how long it lasted. Additionally, it'll identify the cell tower with which the phone is communicating.
May I now direct your attention to exhibits 15 and 16? Again, Your Honor, I ask permission to screen share while laying foundation.
Certainly, and you don't have to ask for that any further.
Now, Detective Markowitz, what are these two images?
These are a map of the cell towers that Avery's phone was communicating with.
And are these images an accurate representation of the data you observed and took from Ms. Becker's phone?
Yes, these are.
Your Honor, I now move to make exhibits 15 and 16 marked as admissible evidence.
Ms. Hayden?
No objection, Your Honor.
15 and 16 shall be admitted.
Now, Detective Markowitz, how would you interpret the information you received from Ms. Becker's phone?
Well, what you can see from this diagram is that she first received a text from Taylor Perkins at 12:47 and then another at 12:55. This next communication is a call coming in at 1:05, followed by the final call at 1:06. It appears that the phone was then turned off. So the first communication was received by the tower nearest Avery's house, implying that her phone was somewhere nearby. The next communication was received by a different tower along Rock Creek Parkway, the road that Avery would most likely take to get to Brackman's home. And then the final two calls came through the cell tower that is nearest Mr. Brackman's house, placing the phone now at the scene of the crime.
Finally, Detective Markowitz, based on your years of experience and knowledge of cases like these, what are your final conclusions of the case as you see it?
Based on all the evidence we collected on and off the crime scene, along with the suspicious location discrepancies, it's absolutely clear that Avery Becker went to Mackenzie Brackman's house on Friday, March 6th, 2020, with the intent to break in and vandalize the house in retaliation.
Objection, Your Honor. Under Rule 704, experts cannot testify to the ultimate issue in terms of the defendant's state of mind.
Ms. Simon, rephrase your question so that he can state the conclusion that he's drawing without going into the state of mind of the defendant.
All right. Detective Markowitz, based on the evidence provided at the crime scene, what did you believe happened there in the home?
I believe that Avery Becker went to Mackenzie Brackman's house when she was and attempted to burglarize it. When she was confronted by an armed Brackman, she acted in a rash way, ultimately resulting in the murder of Mackenzie Brackman.
All right, no further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Hayden, in cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Markowitz, when a criminal defense lawyer is violently murdered, your first assumption is an ex-client, correct?
In my witness statement, I believe I said that was highly unlikely, but there's the specter that it could have been an ex-client.
You said that it was highly unlikely that it was an ex-client that murdered Mr. Brackman?
I believe I did say it was unlikely.
But in this case, the only suspect that you looked into was a high school girl who Mr. Brackman coached in mock trial, correct?
Based on the evidence I followed up on, it seems most likely that Avery Becker was the one who murdered Mackenzie Brackman.
Even though, as a criminal defense lawyer, Mr. Brackman presumably had many enemies.
Well, based on the evidence, it didn't seem very likely at all that he would have been murdered by one of his enemies he might have made being a lawyer.
Speaking of, you knew Mr. Brackman prior to this case, didn't you?
I have encountered him before, yes.
And you have said that he is not very good at his job.
I did believe that I said that most juries see through his cross-examinations.
Let's discuss the day of the murder. You said that Mr. Brackman would have armed himself with a knife, isn't that right?
He likely armed himself with a knife when he suspected an intruder was in the house.
Meaning that the intruder did not bring the knife themselves.
Yes, it seems most likely that that happened.
But you do not know if the intruder had a knife or weapon in their pocket or waistband or something like that.
I most likely would have been visible in the videos if it were in their pocket. As for if it in their waistband, none of the evidence really points to it being premeditated.
But you have no way of knowing whether the intruder came with a knife, correct?
We have no specific way of seeing through or seeing what the intruder was carrying.
And does the murder weapon match the other knives in Mr. Brackman's knife block?
It's not that uncommon to have a different chef's knife from the other knives. So while it doesn't match the specific brand, it's not unusual that it was a different type of knife.
Were there any other mismatched knives in the knife block?
I don't believe so. But
and
the
so it
chef's
is
knife, often the most utilized one, so it likely could have gone dull and he would have replaced it or something along the lines of that.
And so it's possible that there was no struggle over the knife and that the intruder brought it themselves.
I'd say that's highly unlikely, but I suppose anything's possible.
And so some of the only evidence that you have of this struggle, photos of blood splatter, were lost in this case, weren't they?
Some of the cast-off splatter images were corrupted.
And your police department lost those images?
They were corrupted. You know, technology issues can occur anywhere. So.
And Mr. Markowitz, you said that Mr. Brackman knew that the intruder was coming, didn't you?
Yes, I believe I did say that.
And how did Mr. Brackman know that the intruder was coming?
He likely would have been notified by his Ring account.
And even though Ring accounts can alert their owners, you provided no evidence of whether or not Mr. Brackman had these notifications turned on, did you?
There was no specific evidence, but he was paying a fee even to keep access to recorded events, so it seems like he would be the more careful one.
But although you've downloaded the contents of hundreds of phones, you didn't bother to find this information out, did you?
I was unable to find this information.
And so you said yourself that cell phones don't always connect to the nearest cell tower, do they?
Usually they do connect to the nearest cell tower, but not always.
And sometimes they'll go to a different area, or they'll go to a different tower if they're in a busy area somewhere like a mall.
In pretty rare circumstances, yes.
So the cell tower data could mean entirely nothing about Avery Becker's phone's whereabouts on March 6th.
I would say it's highly coincidental that it would first interact with the tower nearest her house, and then the one interact with the tower on the road she would probably take, and then interact with the tower that is nearest Mackenzie Brackman's home. Say that's
I guess or no would be sufficient, Mr. Markowitz.
Would you repeat the question?
So the cell tower data could mean entirely nothing about the location of Avery's phone on that day. Is it possible?
I would not say that. I can explain if you'd like. But...
Let's refer to Exhibit 16, actually. Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to bring Exhibit 16 back up on the screen?
Certainly.
This is your diagram, isn't it, Mr. Markowitz?
Yes, I believe this is the chart or data set I put together.
And do you see Blair Rollins' house on this map?
I do not see it. Sorry, I'm not that close to the screen.
Right there, right on the left.
Oh, I do see it now, yes.
And so you made this diagram, didn't you?
I did make this diagram based on the data I'd collected from Avery's phone.
So you put Blair Rollins' house on this map?
I believe when I did, I guess.
And it's in the exact same cell tower range as Mr. Becker's phone.
I suppose it is, but I have no evidence or reason to suspect that this was the work of Blair Rollins.
So as you just said, Blair was not relevant enough to investigate, yet Blair's house is in the exact same antenna range as Mrs. Becker's, isn't it?
I would dismiss that as nothing more than a coincidence.
Thank you, my co-counsel. You can bring down Exhibit 16 now. Mr. Markowitz, you looked into Avery because of some texts sent between Alex Fuentes and the defendant, correct?
Yes, as well as the sort of verbal confirmation from Alex.
And the only evidence that you have of this interaction is a purported screenshot sent to you by Alex Fuentes.
Are you asking if a high school student would set up another for murder? Sorry.
That was not my question. My question was, do you have any evidence besides those screenshots to confirm this conversation?
Well, I have no evidence or reason to suspect that these screenshots were tampered with. And I would say these are the main piece of evidence I'm using.
So your main piece of evidence was a screenshot sent to you by a high schooler?
A screenshot sent to me by a high schooler, but I have no evidence or reason, like I said, to suspect that these were tampered with in any way.
And if they had been tampered with, you would have no way of knowing, would you?
Well, we would have, if there were evidence suggested it might have been tampered with, we would have looked up on it. But I don't see why a high school student would try and set up a friend.
And so you didn't think to do any investigation of Taylor Perkins' phone either, did you?
I was unaware that Avery actually had an alibi because she would not conduct an interview with me.
So just to confirm, you cannot prove that Avery ever sent Alex Fuentes a single text?
We have the word of a student. We have no evidence or reason to suspect that she didn't. At least
can you or can you not prove that, Mr. Markowitz?
Would you repeat the question?
Can you prove that Avery Becker ever sent Alex Fuentes a single text?
Based on the evidence we have, it's highly likely that she did, except...
And you cannot prove that Mr. Brackman anticipated an intruder?
Well, wasn't he sitting in his kitchen? I think it would be very difficult for him to have been surprised.
But you cannot prove it, can you?
Based on the evidence, it's highly unlikely that he was surprised.
I understand that it's highly unlikely, Mr. Markowitz, but please just tell me if you can prove it as a fact or not.
Prove it specifically, we don't have any video confirmation that he was surprised, but based on the circumstances, it's almost certainly, he almost certainly was.
And you cannot prove the definitive location of Avery's phone on March 6th, can you?
We have the cell tower records, which give us a picture of where she was.
And finally, you never looked into any other possible suspects besides Avery Becker, did you?
When we followed up on the evidence, we looked up on all suspects that, the evidence would have pointed to.
And they only pointed to Avery Becker, correct?
The evidence we followed up on only pointed to Avery Becker. In fact, yes, I suppose that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Simon, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
All right, Detective Markowitz, would you have any need to suspect an ex-client after reviewing the evidence?
No, we have no need at all. Based on the evidence we followed, it's very clear that it was Avery Becker, in fact, who murdered Mackenzie Brackman.
And Detective Markowitz, could you speak more on the likeliness of a phone connecting with multiple towers that's not in its vicinity?
I would say it would almost be a miracle that it would connect with all three of those towers and not actually be in any one of their specific areas of coverage.
Now, Detective Markowitz, they mentioned a little bit about Alex's screenshots. Was there a need to look through Alex's phone further?
No, like I said before, there was no evidence or reasons to suspect that they were tampered with. I don't see why a high school student would try and set up a friend anyway.
And now, in terms of Taylor Perkins, were you aware that Taylor Perkins was ever involved as an alibi?
I was not aware that she was involved as an alibi. In fact, I wish Avery had cooperated and conducted an interview with me, but she had not. She did not.
All right, no further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Thank you. Detective Markowitz, you can step down now. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses they wish to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, we call Alex Fuentes to the stand.
Ms. Fuentes, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, ma'am?
I do.
Counsel, whenever you're ready.
Hello, Mr. Fuentes. Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Alex Fuentes, and I am a current senior at Colorado High School.
And what was your relationship with the victim, Mackenzie Brackman?
He was my mock trial coach for 4 years, and yeah, I adored him.
And were you on mock trial last year at the time of his death?
I was.
And how long did you say you were on mock trial for?
Since freshman year, so that's 4 years.
Did you respect your coach?
I did. He led the team very well, and he always got us to do very well. And from what I could tell, he was a very good lawyer as well.
And why did you join mock trial?
Originally, I had gotten the idea from Avery herself. I enjoyed being on the team, and I enjoyed mock trials, so I stuck with it throughout high school.
What is your relationship with Avery?
We were really close in freshman year, and then we just kind of separated, but we are still friends.
And why was Avery such a bad mock trial teammate?
From my point of view, she caused a lot of anxiety on the team, and she always was never really prepared for practice, and it left me and, from what I could tell, the whole team very stressed, and we had no idea what she was going to say or what she was going to do. And yeah.
And were you ever jealous of Avery when it came to mock trial?
I mean, of course I was jealous. I saw her get rewarded for doing the bare minimum and not really putting in the time and the work, whereas I was spending hours preparing and studying, but this only pushed me harder to be a better student and a mock trial teammate. And yeah.
So how far would this jealousy go?
Nowhere. It really was just within myself, and I was pushing myself through the jealousy.
From your point of view, what was the relationship between Avery and Mr. Brackman?
It was pretty hostile. They were arguing all the time. And then, I mean, there was this one instance where Avery had gotten kicked off the team, and after a pretty big fight between her and coach, and she vandalized his car.
Were you talking with Avery when she vandalized his car?
I was. She had texted me after asking me to talk to coach and try and get
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Any response?
Your Honor, the witness is testifying to a statement of interest made by the defendant.
Overruled.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Were you talking with Avery after she vandalized the car?
Oh, yeah. So she had texted me to talk to
Objection, Your Honor, best evidence. I believe that this text exchange, I believe that the defense requests to see this text exchange.
Blair?
If you would like, I can screen share the evidence right now, Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead and continue with your questioning.
Yeah, so she asked me to talk to coach about getting her back on the team. And at first I was a little confused because it didn't seem like I could do anything at the time. I mean, she vandalized his car, and coach had already asked her to quit the team. And
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Overruled. Continue.
Yeah.
And how did this make you feel, being in such a position?
Like I said, I didn't know what to do. I mean, honestly, I wasn't that surprised that she took it that far, but
Objection, speculation.
Response?
The witness is testifying to her opinion in this matter and what she personally observed.
Overruled. She may continue.
I was a little bit confused by what she thought I could do, but in the end, I told her that I would try, but like I said, there really wasn't anything that I could do at that point.
And how come you didn't show these text messages to the detective on your phone?
Well, my phone was very old and it was losing charge very quickly, so I had charged it before I went to the station to make sure that I actually could show them the text messages, but when I was rushing out the door, I completely forgot it, and once I was at the station, they told me that just regular screenshots would be fine.
Objection, hearsay.
Explain.
Your Honor, this statement, they told me screenshots would be just fine. The declarant has not been established, and this is an out-of-court statement.
Ms. Blair?
Ms. Fuentes is testifying to what she heard from the detective about this situation.
Miss, is it Faye?
It's fake.
Miss Faye?
Your Honor, this witness is speaking to a statement outside of court being offered in trial today. That is hearsay, and yeah, that is hearsay.
Ms. Blair?
Again, Ms. Fuentes is testifying to her personal knowledge on this matter.
As to what she was told, I'm going to sustain that.
Your Honor, I move to strike from the record.
Just the fact that she said she was told is going to be stricken.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Ms. Blair, ask another question.
My apologies, Your Honor. What was your reaction to this text exchange between you and Avery Becker?
I was, like I said, I can't say that I was really shocked because she was very angry, and she, I could, from the from her and Coach Brackman, when they were talking, it was always really hostile. So
Objection, Your Honor, improper character evidence.
Overruled. Move on.
Your Honor, we move to admit Exhibit 14 as admissible evidence.
Ms. Fay?
Could I ask the prosecution to clarify Exhibit 14?
The text exchange between Avery Becker and Alex Fuentes.
Your Honor, may I object?
May you object? Are you objecting?
Yes. Yes, I am objecting.
What is your objection?
Under Rule 1003, this document, this screenshot, is unadmissible due to the original's authenticity. As the authenticity of the original text has not been certified.
Ms. Blair, could you please lay a little foundation for the witness's knowledge of the document?
I believe earlier in the direct exam, we laid foundation for Alex Fuentes talking about this text exchange with Avery Becker after the incident where she vandalized Mackenzie Brackman's car.
No, I'm saying specifically her knowledge of Exhibit 14.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question, Your Honor.
What is Exhibit? You've got to put up Exhibit 14, and I need to know that she has some foundation for what Exhibit 14 is.
Okay, permission to screen share then, Your Honor.
Certainly.
Sorry. It is not sharing the right document. My apologies, Your Honor.
Well, does the witness have Exhibit 14?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Your
Okay,
Honor, my team can share Exhibit 14 if they need it.
Certainly. Either way, she can either say she's looking at it or it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Ms. Fuentes, are you currently looking at the exhibit?
I am.
And what exactly is this exhibit, Ms. Fuentes?
It is the text exchange after Avery was kicked off the team and vandalized Coach Brackman's car. She had asked me to talk to Coach about getting her back on the team, and then she went on to talk about trashing.
Your Honor, objection. The witness cannot testify to the contents of the exhibit as it has not been entered into evidence yet.
Yes, go ahead and finish your foundation and I'll make a ruling on the admission.
Your Honor, we actually asked to move on due to time constraints.
Okay. The court will admit this document and we'll go ahead and move on.
Ms. Fuentes, do you have anything to do with Mackenzie Brackman's murder?
No, he was my mock trial coach. I respected him in the highest amount. I think he was, I don't know why anyone would do this, and it's shocking that anyone would think that I would.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Cifuentes. I would first like to draw your attention to the day Detective Markowitz brought you into interview. On the phone, you and the detective spoke about the text messages that you received from Avery, yes?
I believe so.
And Detective Markowitz had you go into the station to interview about the text messages, yes?
Yes.
Now, on your way to the police station about these text messages, you forget your phone, yes?
It was charging and I completely forgot it when I left to the station.
Thank you. The detective, though, accepted these screenshots from you, yes?
Yes, he said that just regular screenshots would be completely fine for their investigation.
And he didn't ever try to physically retrieve your phone?
After he received the screenshots, I did not hear anything else.
To your knowledge, the detective didn't try to verify these texts further?
I told him that these were the text messages that Avery had sent me after she vandalized the car, and
So no, he did not try to verify these texts further.
After I told him they were from Avery, that was his verification.
So if you did forge these texts, the detective wouldn't know, as he didn't further verify them?
I did not forge these texts. I do not even know how to. Yeah.
Now, you didn't provide the detective with these texts until a day after your in-person meeting with him?
I had forgotten them at my house when I went to the station, and when I was there, he said that I offered to go back and bring my phone, but he said that text messages were okay.
Right, so the day after your in-person interview, you sent the text?
I do not remember when I sent them, but I sent them after I
Ms.
left.
Fuentes, in your affidavit, you said that the day after your interview, you sent the text.
Okay, then that's correct, yes.
So that means you had an entire day to possibly forge these reported text exchange?
No, I took screenshots and I sent them once I was home.
Thank you. Missy Fuentes, you know Blair Rollins, don't you?
She goes to my high school and I see her in the halls sometimes.
And you know that Coach Brackman represented a Colorado high school student in trial before?
I did hear that, yes.
Now, Detective Markowitz never asked you about Blair Rollins, did he?
I do not believe that was brought up.
So no, it was not.
I do not remember exactly, but I do not think so.
So Detective Markowitz never asked you about any other suspect, did he?
Again, I can't remember exactly, but I don't remember.
So Detective Markowitz never asked you about any other person besides Avery Becker?
Again, I don't remember exactly if he mentioned someone, but I do not remember Blair Rollins coming up.
Thank you. Now I'd like to talk about your relationship with Avery, Avery on the team. Avery would show up to unprepared, you said, right?
Yes, we were given the cases and we would, from what I could tell, the whole team would spend a lot of hours and work into making sure that we knew the case and so that we could do well. But Avery, on the other hand, would really just come in unprepared, but in her defense, she was able to get away with it and was able to get rewarded for it.
Right. In your words, you said that Avery would do the bare minimum.
Yes, she would.
And you said on direct, you were jealous of her for getting these awards.
I feel like anyone would be jealous. I mean, you spend hours working for something that you really are passionate about, and then someone does less than you and gets rewarded for it. But
Thank you. No further questions, Ms. Fuentes.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. What is your relationship to Blair Rollins, Alex?
Again, she's just a student at my high school, and I see her in the hall sometimes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ma'am, you can go ahead and step down. Does the prosecution wish to call any other witnesses at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, we ask to bring Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
All right. Ms. Kuzak, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can start when you're ready, counsel.
Hello, Ms. Kuzak. Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Kyle Kuzak.
And what do you do for your profession?
I am a certified crime reconstructor for the Denver Police Department.
How long have you been investigating crime?
I have over 19 years of experience.
Ms. Kuzak, what is your relationship to the Denver Police Department?
I am a civilian employee of the Denver Police Department.
And what type of cases have you worked on, Ms. Kuzak?
I've worked on home invasions, burglaries, property crimes, and other fatal accidents.
And what do you do to your day-to-day to investigate crime scenes?
I start by receiving the evidence, including photos and videos from the Denver Police Department, and then I start my analyzing process.
Your Honor, I now submit Ms. Kuzak as an expert witness on crime scene reconstruction.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, all questions regarding the credibility of this witness will be addressed on cross.
She shall so be admitted.
Ms. Kuzak, can you tell us a little bit about how you actually look into and reconstruct cases?
Yes, so first I receive my information from the people who actually processed the crime scene, and then I start my process by analyzing and organizing this evidence that I've received, including exhibits, and I finally analyze and create my final conclusion.
Ms. Kuzak, when did you first arrive on scene?
I arrived on scene after the crime scene had initially been processed.
Ms. Kuzak, could you explain Exhibit 9 and Exhibit 18?
Yes, so let me pull them up real quick. Exhibit 9 is a picture of a broken plate next to Mackenzie Brackman's kitchen table. And Exhibit 18 is a picture of scuff marks near the front door of Mackenzie Brackman's home.
And what is the significance of these pieces of evidence?
Both of these pieces of evidence help justify my theory that this was a burglary gone wrong, and they both show the struggle between the intruder and Mackenzie Brackman.
After seeing all the data from the crime scene and observing yourself, how did you personally perceive this crime?
I thought that this crime was a burglary gone wrong, especially because of the clear signs of a conflict and fight between the intruder and Coach Brackman.
And how did you reach these conclusions?
I reached these conclusions by doing my 5-step process, which includes finding or receiving the evidence from the Denver Police Department and creating a spreadsheet and a flow chart with separate columns that kind of show my process and thought process throughout this. And then I create related segments and begin to analyze and dive deeper into the evidence. And finally, I prepare and finalize my reconstruction report.
And finally, after examining all of the evidence of this case, what do you believe happened?
I believe that the intruder entered through the back door, which is apparent from the ring camera videos, which startled Mr. Brackman, which allowed him to arm himself with a knife. This then caught the intruder off guard, which resulted in a fight between the two, which finally led to Mackenzie Brackman's death in front of his front door.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever
Ms.
you're ready.
Kuzak, you say that you approach crime scene reconstruction in 5 steps, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Let's go through that process one by one. When you arrived at the scene to complete your recognition and documentation step, the crime lab had already processed the evidence, right?
That is correct.
Which means that you didn't have fresh eyes on the scene?
This really isn't necessary to my steps. I do witness the crime scene, which helps me get a feel for how...
But you weren't the first person to view the crime scene, correct?
No, it was analyzed before I got there.
So the evidence could have been ruffled around with and you wouldn't know because you didn't see the crime scene firsthand.
I've had many cases like this where the crime scene is actually processed before and it doesn't really seem to have an effect on my final conclusion.
The second step in your process was the collection of evidence, correct?
Correct.
However, in all your apparently meticulous work, the digital files for the photographs of the crime scene became corrupted?
This was rather just an issue with simple technology. It really doesn't have
So
any...
that's a yes?
Yes, that is correct. They did disappear, but it does not have any sort of, I guess, say on me and my forensics team.
Which means that the photograph evidence the jury will review today is not an accurate depiction of the crime scene?
All of the photos, except for the one of the blood splatter, are evident and ready to be shown to the jury. However, that one picture was in fact lost.
It was all of the photos that were corrupted, though, wasn't it?
I believe it was just the one photo of the blood splatter that disappeared.
Actually, the photo of the blood splatter was lost, but all other photos were corrupted. Am I correct?
I believe, once again, the photo of the blood splatter was corrupted and stolen, but the others were rather not touched and are still the same.
But the photos of the blood splatter are not here today for the jury's review so that they can render a fair verdict.
They are not.
The third step in this process was the evaluation of evidence, correct?
Correct.
And in this process, you analyzed the scuff marks in Mr. Becker's home?
Yes, I did.
And in your evaluation, you determined that this evidence indicated a fight between the intruder and Mr. Brackman?
Yes, I believe that Mr. Brackman and the intruder fought over the possession of the knife.
And you would never make any assumptions without evidence, correct?
That is correct.
Yet you assumed these scuff marks indicated a fight when they could have been created at any point, correct?
I was given these scuff marks from the forensics team who does, in fact, analyze the crime scene, and they would not give me any information that wasn't relevant to the case, and I would not use any information that wasn't relevant to the case.
Actually, carbon dating is not possible on these scuff marks, which means you cannot determine the absolute time these were created. Am I correct?
Although I cannot determine the absolute time that these were created, the relevance of them is still very important
But because we don't know the time, these scuff marks could have been created a year ago when Mr. Brackman just came back from a hike.
I do not believe this is true.
Secondly, in your evaluation of evidence, you determined that the Ring doorbell notified Mr. Brackman of the intruder.
I believe that it was a combination of either Ring doorbell notifications or just the sound of the screen door opening.
Yet you again assumed that Mr. Brackman had his notifications turned on when they very well might have been turned off, correct?
I believe this is rather a large part of Van Owen's theory.
But you didn't take the time to confirm your own theory by checking Mr. Brackman's Ring doorbell?
I rather based my theory off of the noise of the screen of the sliding door opening.
Then your fourth step was hypothesis and testing, then reconstruction, correct?
Correct.
Now you say that after completing this step, that the evidence you collected could only lead you to one conclusion.
Yes, I believe that my evidence pointed me in the direction of a burglary gone wrong.
So you knew this case for sure if it led you to a solitary conclusion, and a simple yes or no would suffice.
May you repeat the question?
So you knew this case for sure if it led you to a solitary conclusion?
Yes, I believe that this led me to only one conclusion.
Just like you were absolutely confident in your recollection of lost and corrupted photographs?
Yes, I do believe that.
And just like you were absolutely confident in the Ring doorbell notifications?
That is not really part of my theory. It is rather a part of Markowitz's theory. I mainly based my conclusion off of the actual noise from the screen door opening.
And just like you were absolutely confident in the analysis of the scuff marks?
I'm confident in the team that really that
took. Yes or no would suffice to this question.
Yes, I'm confident in my work.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzak. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, is it necessary for you to be first on the crime scene for you to do your job correctly?
No, it is rather not part of my job. I am simply given the evidence that I then use to reconstruct the crime scene.
And do you believe your team would tamper with the crime scene?
No, I do not. I believe that they do their job very well in giving me the evidence and giving others the evidence also.
Do you believe it's highly unlikely both the plate and scuff marks would be made if there was no struggle?
I do believe it was highly unlikely, as these are clear signs of struggle that have come up in my 19 years of experience.
And did your team only send you evidence that would be relevant to this case?
Yes, my team and I work together to help create this this conclusion, including the time that they give me my evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Ma'am, you can step down. Does the prosecution have any further witnesses they wish to call at this time?
prosecution rests, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Does the defense wish to call any witnesses at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Professor Van Owen to the stand.
Professor Van Owen, if you can raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Good evening, Professor Van Owen. Would you please state your full name and spell your last for the record?
Hello, I am Professor Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
And what do you do for a living?
I've worked for the Aurora PD as a security guard and as a school resource officer. Now I'm a professor. My journeys have led me to a community college, and now I work at CU.
Where did you receive your education?
I received my bachelor's in English right here in Colorado at Boulder, and my master's in criminal justice at Ashford University.
What areas do you teach as a professor?
Everything ranging from police procedures, police practices, and most importantly, social justice.
Have you ever used your experience to testify as an expert witness?
Absolutely. I avail myself regularly as an expert courtroom witness. I've consulted on over 100 cases thus far. I've also been an expert for courts in 6 different states. I get to use my expertise everywhere from the canyons to the Rockies.
What areas have you testified to as an expert witness?
I testify to crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police practices.
How many times have you testified in each of these areas?
Crime scene reconstruction 8 times, cell tower analysis 5 times, and general police investigations 12 times. This is out of the over 100 cases that I have previously testified in.
What are the methods that you use to determine the facts of a case?
Well, anything ranging from police reports, crime scene reconstruction, and cell tower reports.
Did you use these methods and your prior expertise to conclude your investigation in today's case?
I absolutely did. It's like you're talking to a beekeeper about bee care, honey extraction, and hive construction. This is the wheelhouse of my expertise in this case.
Your Honor, because of Professor Van Owen's extensive experience as a defense expert, the defense would like to enter Professor Van Owen as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police practices pursuant to Rule 702.
Ms. Blair, did you have any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, she shall be so qualified.
Professor Van Owen, have you reviewed the police's opinion in today's case?
I have, backwards and forwards.
Do you agree with their opinion?
I disagree wholeheartedly. Numerous areas were either overlooked or completely botched.
Which areas in the investigation were overlooked?
I've organized their flaws into 3 categories: the attack, the opportunity of the intruder, and the carelessness in the collection of evidence.
Let's look further into those points. Could you start with the attack?
Certainly. The police believe that the victim anticipated the intruder's attack, and there was some sort of struggle between the two. This was based on, get this, Ring doorbell alerts and scuff marks on the floor.
Were those reliable indicators?
Absolutely not. The police failed to see if the victim even had Ring alerts. It was a very simple check, but the prosecution just assumed they were on. It's very likely they were off.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the scuff marks you previously mentioned?
The prosecution never even dated the scuff marks. They have no idea when they were made or where they are from. Without this information, they're just scuff marks of doubt.
In lieu of this information, what did you find to be the most likely scenario?
The victim was clearly sitting at a table, unaware of the intruder. The intruder stabbed him from behind and ran.
Moving on, the second point that you mentioned was the opportunity of the intruder. Why did you find the police overlooked this area?
To start, the height of the intruder was entirely disregarded.
Why does the height matter?
If you look at the photos, the victim was clearly a large, full-grown man. For the prosecution's theory to work, the intruder would have to be standing above him to stab at that downward angle. Avery, while the victim was upright, could clearly not stab a full-grown man.
Were there any other details in this case that the police miscalculated?
Yes, the police relied on unpredictable cell tower reports.
Why are they unpredictable?
Think of a cell tower like a glass of water. When one glass gets full, you move on to the next. Same goes for cell phones. When one tower doesn't provide the best signal, it moves on to the next. This connection is impossible to predict. A phone could sit under a sofa for hours and connect to several different towers.
Why is the cell tower information crucial?
The prosecution assumed that this map could show the location of Avery, but as I said, cell towers work nothing like a GPS, and phone GPS data was not provided by the prosecution.
The final point that you mentioned was the carelessness in the collection of evidence. Could you elaborate?
On top of everything, photos of supposed blood drops around the house were corrupted. The prosecution entirely lost a set of evidence from the crime scene.
Is there any other information that the police did not investigate?
The prosecution failed entirely to consider other suspects, specifically Blair Rollins.
Who's Blair Rollins?
Blair is a former CHS student. Her father was sent to jail after the victim represented him in trial.
Was Blair questioned by the police?
Blair Rollins was not questioned by the police. Let me say that again. Blair, someone with a clear motive against the victim, was not located or questioned by the police.
So overall, what were your conclusions about the police's investigation?
Simply put, the police have no files, no phone, and no felony. This investigation was rushed, and Avery Becker has been wrongly accused.
Why are the 3 key details that we discussed today important?
These points are the foundation of the prosecution's case. They're as pivotal as your axle of your car when you're going 90 miles an hour. If you're going to put someone on trial for murder, you better make sure every detail is correct. The details of the prosecution are far from correct.
Thank you, Professor Van Owen. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever
Hello,
you're ready.
Professor Van Owen.
Good evening.
You were a former police officer for the Aurora Police Department, correct?
I was, yes.
And you quit the Aurora Police Department after 9 months, correct?
I did. I left on my own doing.
Yes, you quit the Aurora Police Department after an incident where you were the arresting officer, correct?
Yes, it's the biggest regret of my entire life.
Since that incident, you have worked several jobs, true?
I have, yes, all pertaining in expertise as relevant to this case.
One of those jobs is, like you said, a defense expert in the U.S. District Courts, correct?
Yes.
In that job, you stated you have consulted on over 100 cases, right?
Yes, I'm commonly entered as a credible defense expert.
Yes. You also said that you've testified in over 6 different U.S. District Courts, right?
I have. My expertise takes me everywhere from the canyons to the Rockies. I'm really lucky.
And in all of these times as an expert witness, you've only ever testified on behalf of the defense, right?
To be fair, I've never been hired by the prosecution, but if you're looking for the bumper sticker appeal, then sure.
Okay. And do you recall how long Detective Markowitz has been on the police force from earlier in his statement?
I don't. Could you remind me?
Yes, 13 years, but he has been a detective for 7. And as you stated before, you worked for the Aurora Police Department for 9 months, right?
I did, yes.
And would you say that 9 months as an active police officer hasn't given you more experience than a 13-year veteran with 7 years of experience as a detective?
My experience comes from testifying as a defense expert against police practices, not necessarily from the 9 months. However, that is included in my expertise.
Okay, so you stand here believing that you have the means to call Detective Markowitz, and I quote, defective Markowitz, end quote. You stand here calling him that, correct?
Freudian slip.
Pardon me?
Freudian slip. That's what I say in my statement. That's how I addressed him, yes.
But you felt no need to delete that from your statement?
Objection, relevance.
Response, Ms. Blair?
This is going to the credibility of the witness along with a bias against the police force.
Sustain. or overruled, excuse me. Go ahead.
And in your professional opinion, you believe someone broke into Mackenzie Brackman's house with the intention of murder, right?
Someone did break into Mackenzie Brackman's house with the intention of murder.
The murder of Mr. Brackman occurred in the middle of the day, correct?
It did.
And in the video footage on the Ring video doorbell, the intruder was not carrying a knife, correct?
Not visibly in their hands. A knife could be stored anywhere, pockets, I don't know.
But not visibly in their hands, correct?
No, not visibly in their hands. They were not walking up to someone's house with a knife.
And in your statement, you believe, and I quote, the police came to an easy conclusion, end quote, correct?
They did come to an easy conclusion.
This easy conclusion is Avery Becker, right?
It is. It was a baseless conclusion.
You believe Avery Becker became a suspect without the support of evidence, correct?
She did become a suspect without supportive evidence.
And in your opinion, you believe an unbiased police investigator should never assume facts to be true unless proven by evidence, correct?
Yes, this is Investigations 101.
However, you thought Alex framed Avery when saying, and I quote, since Fuentes took the time to create fake text messages that would implicate Avery Becker, end quote. You said that, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
In your statement, you thought Alex framed Avery when saying, and I quote, since Fuentes took the time to create fake text messages that would implicate Avery Becker, end quote. You said that, correct?
Yes, I said that, and that is my conclusion.
In that statement, you assumed Alex Fuentes doctored text messages, right?
Yes, because the prosecution never made any attempt to verify them. That's my reasoning.
What evidence is there to confirm these accusations?
Well, there's plenty. You can see from Alex Fuentes' cross-examination that she had plenty of motive against the defendant to frame her for this type of thing. You can also see that she sent the screenshots of the text a day after she was questioned for it.
But when you wrote this in your statement, you had no knowledge of this cross-examination, now did you?
I had knowledge of the police investigation and when Jordan Markowitz had received this evidence, so yes.
And with these accusations, you believe Blair Rollins could have committed the murder because Blair was also absent from school that day, right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
And with these accusations, you believe Blair Rollins could have committed the murder because Blair was also absent from school that day, right?
Not only was she absent from school, she has been missing ever since March 6th. So yes.
You also assume Avery Becker is innocent when being absent from school on the same day, right?
Absolutely. Avery Becker has an alibi.
You also said in your statement that Jonathan Rollins yelled out that Brackman was going to die. Did you not?
Yes, I did.
Yet in Jonathan Rollins' court statement, he simply yelled out, and I'll quote, "I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do." Does it not?
Yes, it states that, still proving plenty of motive for for Blair Rollins to have murdered the victim.
And you recognize that you signed an affidavit. In your signed affidavit, it asked you to acknowledge that you carefully reviewed your statement to ensure the most accuracy possible, correct?
Absolutely. I've done this in over 100 cases.
Yet you still had discrepancies on what exactly Jonathan Rollins yelled out in his court statement, did you not?
When something is offered as evidence, I don't necessarily need to find it exactly word for word. However, yes.
However, the "I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do" is far different than—
Objection, Your Honor. These facts are not in evidence.
Ms. Blair?
I will move on, Your Honor.
All right.
Once again, you misspoke in your statement and neglected to review your statement to ensure its accuracy and base your theory of guilt upon assumption, correct?
Absolutely not. I reviewed my statement head to toe, and I exactly know what I was talking about.
You reviewed your statement head to toe, correct?
I did, yes.
Yet again, there were discrepancies in you assuming Alex Fuentes doctored text messages without any real hard facts, along with you misspeaking on as to which Jonathan Rollins said.
I believe the discrepancy in the text messages is the prosecution's fault for not proving them.
I do not believe I brought up the text messages.
Sorry, I thought that was the first thing you said. Would you clarify?
Earlier in your cross-exam, I mentioned how you said in your statement that you thought Alex Fuentes doctored text messages without really any evidence.
I believe that the
Objection, Your
discrepancy.
Honor, asked and answered. The witness previously testified to a question of this similarity.
Ms. Blair, response?
Again, I'm just asking the witness to clarify on what she testified to earlier as it became unclear.
Overruled. She may answer.
Could you repeat the question?
You misspoke in your statement again and neglected to review your statement, correct?
I did not neglect to review my statement. Everything has been reviewed head to toe.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, did you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Does your past with the police in any way affect your investigation or your testimony here today?
Absolutely not. I am a crime scene. Someone who analyzes based on experience and all the evidence I am presented with. Absolutely not.
And could you briefly describe again why the police's investigation is flawed?
Absolutely. I categorized it into the attack, the opportunity of the defendant.
Objection, Your Honor.
What is your
Beyond the
objection?
scope, I did not mention this in my cross-examination.
Ms. Murphy?
I can move on, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Can you briefly describe again why Blair Rollins is a possible suspect in this case?
She is someone with a clear motive against the victim who was not seen a day after March 6th.
Beyond the scope, not mentioned in my cross-examination.
Ms. Murphy?
Your Honor, the prosecution mentioned Blair Rollins and their motive in the cross. She discussed Blair Rollins' father and the contents that were said in court. There were several mentions of Blair Rollins in cross.
I'll allow the answer. Go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Why is Blair Rollins a possible suspect in this case?
She has clear motive against the victim. She was absent from school on the day of March 6th and has not been seen since. She has not been questioned by the police, and this is a unfinished investigation on behalf of Blair Rollins.
Thank you, Professor Van Owen. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Ma'am, you may step down.
Thank you.
Does the defense wish to call any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls the defendant Avery Becker to the stand.
Ms. Becker, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, counsel.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Becker. Would you please state your full name and spell your last for the record?
Avery Becker, Becker.
And how did you know Mr. Brockman?
Mr. Brockman was my mock trial coach while I was a student at Colorado High School.
And could you describe your relationship with him?
Unfortunately, Mr. Brockman and I didn't always get along very well. I loved mock trial and I was good at it too, yet Brockman seemed to think I was lazy just because I didn't always need to prepare very much. I guess we just didn't really see eye to eye.
So would you say that Mr. Brockman was a good coach?
In my opinion, not really. Mr. Brockman was always very controlling and demeaning. He would practically rewrite all of the students' work and then spend half the practice talking about himself or his Porsche.
And how did you know Taylor Perkins?
Taylor Perkins is my best friend. We decided to do mock trial together as a way to get out of the house and see each other more often.
So last year, your senior year of high school, how was your mock trial season?
Unfortunately, it didn't go great. Mr. Brockman assigned me the role of crossing the expert witness and of doing the closing statement, which are both big roles, but that didn't stop him from trying to completely take over all of my stuff.
So what ended up happening before the regional tournament?
Well, about a month before the regional tournament, I showed up to practice only for Mr. Brockman to once again go off about how he didn't think I'd prepared enough. Before I even had an opportunity to get a word in and defend myself, he said that I was demoted to the B team.
And after, oh, sorry, was there, oh, I thought there was an rejection, sorry. And so what did you do?
Well, I was pretty upset at the time because I knew that I deserved my spot on the A team and I'd worked hard for it. But Taylor, who honestly wasn't really that into mock trial anyways, came up with the idea that if she quit the team, Mr. Brockman would be forced to let me back on, and luckily he was, and everything worked out.
So you were put back on the team for the regional tournament?
I was, yes.
And how did the regional tournament go?
It went amazing. Mr. Brockman, like I said, put me back on the team in my original spots, and it went really well. I won Best Closer and Best Attorney.
And after that competition, how did Brockman treat you?
On the Tuesday after the regional competition, Mr. Brockman was right back to his same old self. He said that I didn't deserve the awards I'd received and that the team's victory was only thanks to the scripts that he had practically written. He even said that I was just lucky and only relied on my good looks to get by.
And what did you say to him?
Well, I was pretty upset about it and just tired of being constantly insulted. So I retorted that he couldn't always keep taking credit for our hard work. And I was actually upset enough that I ended up storming out of practice.
And what happened when you stormed out of practice?
Well, when I got to the parking lot, I was holding what I honestly believed to be a dry erase marker, as I'd been about to take notes on the whiteboard about the regional competition.
And so then what did you do with that marker?
I did the dumbest thing I've ever done, and it was immature, and I totally regret it. I took what I thought to be the dry erase marker, and I wrote on Mr. Brockman's car, Worst Attorney Award. I guess I just didn't think it through because I thought it was only an expo marker, but nonetheless, I feel awful about it, and it never should have happened.
And how did Mr. Brockman react to this incident?
Well, when Mr. Brockman walked out to the parking lot, I think trying to talk to me about the argument we just had, he saw the car and he exploded, yelling at me that I was off the team and even calling Taylor a loser.
What happened when you got home that night?
When I got home that night, I was sobbing. I was just so upset that my mock trial career was completely over. And I ended up talking to my mom about it. I didn't mention the car, but I told her everything else. And fortunately, like always, she was able to calm me down and help me figure out that the best thing to do was just to go apologize to Mr. Brockman and try to make things right.
So with your mother's advice and, with time and hindsight, how did you feel about the incident with the car?
Almost immediately, I felt terrible about all of it. It was just a total mistake, and I felt so bad about it. So I tried to talk to Mr. Brockman in person, and I texted him. I even offered to scrub the car, and if that didn't work, I said I could get a job to pay for a repainting.
Did Brockman ever get to accept your numerous apologies?
No, Mr. Brockman refused to speak to me in his office, and he never texted me back. I just really wish I'd had the opportunity to make things right with him.
And what did you do on the evening of March 5th?
Well, on March 5th, Taylor and I went to the Fry Shack where we saw a bunch of the other mock trial kids, including Alex Fuentes, and we just, played games on our phone and then went to the mall to walk around.
Did you, at the time, text Alex Fuentes often?
Oh, no, I don't know why I would. Alex Fuentes and I aren't really friends. In fact, I heard Alex claim earlier today that I texted him about trying to get back on the team and about saying that I was going to trash Brockman's house, but I never did either of those things and would never text Alex about anything like that.
Interesting. So after your experience at the Fry Shack on the 5th, what happened when you woke up on the 6th?
Well, when I woke up on the 6th, I immediately noticed that my phone had gone missing.
And what did you do about it?
Well, I knew that the last time I'd seen it was probably the day before, either at the Fry Shack or the mall, so I picked up Taylor and we went to go look for it. We looked, at the Fry Shack and the mall, but unfortunately we were never able to find it.
And is your phone found to this day?
No, it's still missing. I have no idea where it is.
Miss Becker, do you know who Blair Rollins is?
I do. Blair Rollins is a student who went to my high school, and he was pretty close friends with Alex Fuentes and was about the same size and build as me too.
And did you know if Blair knew Mr. Brackman?
Blair definitely knew Mr. Brackman. Mr. Brackman was the attorney that lost the case that got Blair's dad sent to jail.
And do you know where Blair Rollins is now?
I don't. I have no idea. I don't think anybody really does. He just kind of went missing.
Miss Becker, do you know where Mr. Brackman lived?
No, I have no idea how or why I would know that.
So did you break into Mr. Brackman's home?
No, of course not. I had absolutely no reason to, and I didn't even know where he lived.
And so Avery Becker, did you kill Mackenzie Brackman?
Absolutely not. I may not have liked his coaching style very much, but that certainly doesn't make me a murderer. I feel awful about what I accidentally did to his car, but I would never want to harm him in any way, and I wish I'd had an opportunity to make things right for him. I certainly did not kill Mr. Brackman.
Thank you, Your Honor. No questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Simon, any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
So, Ms. Becker, how long have you worked with Mr. Brackman on the mock trial team?
Quite a while, all of my time in high school, actually.
Would you say that mock trial team was important to you?
Absolutely. It was something that I loved and was good at too.
But you got kicked off by Mr. Brackman, yes?
Yes, unfortunately. It was totally my fault, though. I feel awful about the whole situation.
Is it true that you and Mr. Brackman have butted heads in the past?
That is true. Like I said, we just never really saw eye to eye. I guess we're just very different people, and so it sometimes made it hard for us to get along easily, but, it was just a difference of personalities, I think.
Did Mr. Brackman ever insult you during those arguments?
He did, unfortunately. Mr. Brackman, like I said, was often very demeaning and insulting, which was sometimes hard, but, we figured it out.
So, when he insulted you, you got upset, didn't you?
Of course, yeah. It's not easy to be constantly berated and insulted. So yeah, at times it did make me pretty upset.
Then before state, you had a big fight with Brackman, right?
A big fight, yes, we did.
Wasn't it true at one point before he told you weren't a good worker and that made you even madder?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Ms. Simon, response?
Provided in the witness's own statement as she wrote it in her own affidavit.
Ms. Hayden?
Your Honor, just because it's in this witness's affidavit does not mean it's not an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Overruled. She can answer.
Would you mind restating the question, please?
No problem. Wasn't it true at one point before he told you weren't a good worker and that made you even madder?
At times he did say things like this. I think that, like I said, there were frequent small altercations, and at times it did make me upset, yes.
So mad that you stormed out during this argument, yes?
There was an occasion, yes, where that happened, unfortunately.
So mad that in one instance you went to vandalize his car, correct?
As I explained, I had absolutely no idea I was permanently damaging it or vandalizing it. And had I known that what I was holding was not an expo marker and was a permanent marker, I never would have done it. I feel awful about it nonetheless.
Would you say those were good decisions?
Of course not. Like I said, I am so ashamed of it. It's by far the worst thing I've ever done, and I feel awful about it. I wish I'd had the chance to make it up to Mr. Brackman.
All right, Ms. Becker, you claim you lost your phone the night before the murder, correct?
I did, yes.
And that someone stole your phone and is using it to frame you?
I think that's certainly a possibility, yes, as I had lost it and I have absolutely no idea where it was, even after I'd looked for it very thoroughly.
You're telling me you didn't notice the phone was missing the entire night?
Well, here's the thing. So I'm not usually allowed to use my phone after dinner unless I finish my homework. So I didn't really notice it like usual. And then, of course, I was sleeping, so it would have made it hard to notice. But I noticed very first thing on the 6th, right when I woke up.
Now, you claim Mr. Fuentes and Miss Rollins took the phone, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Simon?
Stated by the witness in her own affidavit as what she personally believes.
Overruled. She may answer.
Yes, I do think that this is certainly a possibility and seems rather likely.
And used it to set you up, correct?
Again, I don't know for sure, but that certainly seems like something that may have happened.
Isn't it true your phone was an iPhone?
It was, yes.
So generally iPhones have passcodes you need to enter to use, correct?
Often, yes.
So even by some mysterious way, if Mr. Fuentes had obtained your phone to use, how would he use it?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Overruled. She can answer.
Well, I believe that's not in my statement. Would you like me to answer anyways?
I would, and it is in a second statement if you would like me to bring that up.
It's not in my own personal statement. Would you like me to answer anyways?
I'm asking you if by some mysterious way Mr. Cifuentes had obtained your phone, how would he have used it?
Right, and I'm saying that that specific information is not in my current statement, but I am happy to answer it if that's what you would like.
Go ahead.
Alex Cifuentes knew my password.
And could you refer me to where in this information you received that?
Well, once again, none of that information is in my statement, but you requested that I answer it anyways. And like I said, Alex knew my password.
And how did he know your password?
I don't know. It was just something that she found out, sharing phones. Like I said, this is not in my statement.
Okay, objection, unfair extrapolation.
All right. I have some stuff that I have to read through for unfair extrapolation. Give me a minute here. I got to find it. All right, scoring panelists. You, the scoring panelists, are the sole arbiters of the dispute. Based upon your own individual observation, good faith judgment, and consistent with the intent of the judicial process, you may decide that A, there is no extrapolation, or B, the statement was not unfair extrapolation, or the question did not ask for unfair extrapolation, as it was not material, or C, the statement was unfair extrapolation as it was material. The ultimate decision is in the discretion of each of you, individual scoring panelists. Consistently with your decision, you may award one or two more points, deduct one or more points, and take no action at all with respect to any of the parties involved. If you determine that there was no unfair extrapolation or that there was no question asking for unfair extrapolation, you may deduct one or more points from the objecting party if you believe that the objection was not made in good faith, was improvident, or was poor sportsmanship. Your decision is final. All right, Ms. Simon, you can continue your questions.
All right, lastly, Avery, you pride yourself on being a very good lawyer in mock trial, don't you?
Yeah, like I said, mock trial is something that I love and I definitely care a lot about, and I was good at it too.
And isn't it true you were really good at, quote, spinning a yarn, as you say?
Of course, but just because I'm good at an extracurricular activity doesn't have any other sort of connotation.
All right, no further questions.
Any redirect, Ms. Hayden?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, what did you do to try and make up for writing on Mr. Brockman's car?
Well, I felt just awful about it, so I did all kinds of things. I went to his office to apologize, I texted him, I offered to scrub the car, I even offered to get a job to pay for repainting.
And how did you feel about Mr. Brockman right before his death?
I guess that before Mr. Brockman passed, I really just felt sorry about the whole situation. I felt awful about the car, and I just wanted an opportunity to make things right with him and to smooth things over between us.
Ms. Becker, who did you see at the Fry Shack on the 5th when you lost your phone?
I saw a bunch of mock trial kids, including Alex Fuentes.
And did Alex Fuentes know your phone passcode?
Alex Fuentes did know my phone passcode, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
This witness may be excused. Does the defense wish to call any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense calls Ms. Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Ma'am, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Hey, I'm Taylor Perkins, Perkins, and I'm a freshman at CU Boulder. Go Buffs!
Ms. Perkins, could you please describe your relationship with Ms. Becker?
Yeah, Avery and I were best friends all throughout high school. I mean, we really did everything together. She even got me to join the mock trial team, and no offense, I wouldn't have done mock trial without her. I mean, when she was demoted, I even stepped down. I would not do it without Avery. She made it fun.
Why was Ms. Becker demoted?
Oh, it was completely ridiculous. So one day, Avery came to practice a little unprepared, but in classic Avery fashion, she pulled it off. Her responses were flawless. But Mr. Brackman seemed to be a little annoyed that she was unprepared and then proceeded to demote her to B team. It was totally unwarranted.
Do you think Ms. Becker deserved to be demoted?
No, absolutely not. Avery put her heart and soul into mock trial. I mean, she loved it. And that's why I stepped down to support Avery. After I stepped down and Avery got put back on the team went to regionals and Avery killed it. She won the best attorney award and best closing argument. She so deserved those awards, but Mr. Brackman didn't seem to think so.
What do you mean Mr. Brackman didn't think she deserved these awards?
Well, at a practice after regionals, Mr. Brackman was giving Avery a really hard time about these awards, saying that she didn't deserve them, which was completely ridiculous. She was amazing at regionals.
How did Ms. Becker react to this?
I mean, Avery got upset, rightfully so. She loved mock trial and deserved those awards. And she wrote Worst Attorney Award on Mr. Brackman's car in what she thought was dry erase marker, but it turned out to be Sharpie. And I mean, she felt horrible. She just expressed to me how horrible she felt about it. And she tried to apologize to Brackman so many times, but he didn't accept any of the apologies.
How did Ms. Becker react to being kicked off the team for this?
She did everything she could to get back on the team, but Brackman didn't want her back.
Moving on, Ms. Perkins, could you please describe from your observations Alex and Avery's relationship?
They weren't friends by any extent of the word.
Ms. Perkins, could you tell me about the night before Mr. Brackman's murder, March 5th?
Yeah, Avery and I actually hung out that night.
What did you do?
We're teenagers. We love our phones. So we played some games on our phone. And then we went to hang out at the Fry Shack, which was not a good idea.
Why not?
Well, the mock trial team was there for, a little post-practice snack. Mock makes you hungry. And Avery seemed clearly upset when she saw the other team, or the rest of the team, and stormed off to the bathroom.
Where was Avery's phone while she was in the bathroom?
It was left on the table.
Was anyone with you while her phone was on the table?
Yeah, actually, Alex Fuentes was.
Did you remember Avery grabbing her phone when you left the Fry Shack?
I don't think Avery grabbed her phone again when we left.
What happened the next morning, the day of Mr. Brackman's death?
Well, Avery and I have first period off together, and we're such good friends. We like to drive to school together, save some gas money. So when I texted Avery about picking her up, she never answered any of my texts. So when I mentioned to her, she realized that she didn't have her phone and must have lost it the day before when we were at the mall.
So what did you end up doing that day?
We went to the mall to look for her phone. We didn't end up going to school. We had already taken the test that our English class had, and the rest of our classes were dry. We were seniors. We deserved a little bit of a break. So we did spend the day looking for her phone at the mall, went back to the Fry Shack, went back to the Fry Shack again to check with the afternoon shift. And while we were there the second time, we ran into the mock trial team again, as we always seem to do.
Ms. Perkins, did you try to call or text Avery's phone that day?
Yes, we called and texted Avery's phone several times throughout the day while walking throughout the mall and going back to stores to find it, but we just weren't successful.
Did the police ever use your phone to check your call logs for that day?
They did not.
Did the police ever try to use your phone to check your location for that day?
No, they didn't.
And was Miss Becker's phone ever found?
It wasn't.
Moving on, Ms. Perkins, who was Blair Rollins?
Blair was a kid who used to go to our high school. I haven't seen Blair in a while at school now that I think about it. Don't really know much about Blair. I think he was friends with Alex Fuentes. But the biggest thing that I do know about Blair is that Mr. Brackman was the attorney in a case that sent Blair's dad to jail.
Was Blair at school on the day Brackman was murdered?
He wasn't.
And were you with Avery all day?
Yes, I was. We spent all day looking for her phone. I mean, those things are expensive. You wouldn't want to have to pay to replace it.
Miss Perkins, did Avery murder Mr. Brackman?
Absolutely not. I was with Avery all day looking for her phone, and at no point did Avery leave my sight. Avery did not murder Mr. Brackman.
Thank you, Miss Perkins. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Perkins, you're best friends with Ms. Becker, correct?
We were really good friends throughout high school. Yeah, I'd say best friends.
And you joined the mock trial team exclusively for her?
I was looking for something to do my senior year, you know, something fun. I was part of the ping pong enthusiasts club, but I wanted to try something new. And Avery seemed to love mock trial, so I decided to give it a whirl.
And then you quit exclusively for her?
I mean, I didn't love mock trial, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And if it helped Avery get back on A team, I totally would have do it. I didn't love it, so it didn't really matter that much to me that I did quit.
You said that if it helped her out in any way, you would step off the team. So it seems like you do a lot of things for Avery Becker.
Avery was a really good friend of mine. I mean, like in any good friendship, I'd hope that the loyalty was mutual.
Now, moving to the day Miss Becker was removed from the mock trial team, she seemed desperate, didn't she?
Can you explain how she seemed desperate? Like elaborate on how she seemed desperate.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase. Did she seem desperate to get back onto the team?
Oh, absolutely. Avery loved mock trial. I mean, she was rightfully mad and she really wanted to get back on the team. She put so much work into mock trial. And I mean, to get demoted and then just be done with it, that would suck.
So desperate that she texted many of your teammates, correct?
I think.
Even Alex Fuentes?
I honestly couldn't tell you. There's a possibility she texted Alex, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yet, in your witness statement, you said right after Avery got kicked off the team, we talked about ways Avery could get back on. Avery texted everyone on the team, I think even Alex Fuentes. Why would you put that in your witness statement if you don't think it was true?
I said, I think she even texted Alex Fuentes. I never said that I don't think it's true that she texted Alex Fuentes. I just said that I don't know 100% that she did.
Right, but if you didn't think it was in the realm of possibility or even likely, you wouldn't have put it in your witness statement, correct?
There's always the possibility, but I have absolutely no way of knowing if she texted Alex Fuentes.
But also in your witness, you said that was really a last resort, though, because Avery and Alex did not get along. And why would you include that information if you didn't think it was very likely?
I mean, Avery loved mock trial, so she really would have done anything to get back on the team. I don't know if she texted Alex Fuentes. As I have said so many times previously, it is a possibility that I included in my witness statement because it is relevant to the case, but I have no way of knowing if she texted Alex Fuentes.
Right, thank you. And on the day before the murder, you believe that Miss Becker lost her phone at the Fry Shack, correct?
Yeah, she went to the bathroom and I don't think she brought her phone with her when she went, and then it was left on the table after we left.
And the Fry Shack was the last place you saw Avery Becker's phone.
Yes.
And the night after leaving the Fry Shack, you and Miss Becker went to the mall, right?
Yeah, we spent all day at the mall looking for her phone. We went to the Fry Shack twice, checked with the afternoon shift, and that is when we saw the mock trial team at the Fry Shack a second time.
And during that time, Avery didn't realize her phone was missing. Is that correct?
No, Avery knew her phone was missing. We were at the mall looking for it.
No, sorry. I'm talking about the day before the murder while you were at the Fry Shack.
I can't testify to what Avery thought that day. Would you like me to? It's not in my statement because I don't know what Avery thought that day. However, I can answer to what I think.
All right. No, that's fine, actually. And then later when you split with Avery, you still do not have any knowledge of whether or not Avery had her phone, correct?
I have no idea to know what Avery was thinking in that moment.
All right. And it is only the next day, the day of the murder, that Avery told you that she lost her phone, correct?
That's when I brought it up when we were going to school, and that's when she noticed. I have no way of knowing if Avery knew that her phone was missing. However, she didn't bring it up with me until I picked her up for school and mentioned it because she didn't respond to my text that morning.
So you're telling me that you had no knowledge of the phone's location until the next day when your friend claimed she lost her phone?
As I said, I wasn't with Avery, but I do not believe that the phone's location between that night and the next morning is relevant.
Well, actually it is, because as you have stated, Avery Becker is actually the only person that knew whether or not her phone was missing. So you cannot tell the jury that
Objection, Your Honor, outside of the scope of this witness.
Overruled. Go ahead and finish your question.
So you cannot tell the jury that Avery Becker lost her phone, correct?
Avery's phone was on the table when she went to the bathroom, and I do not believe she picked it up again when we left.
But you don't know for a fact?
I have no idea to know for a fact. You can ask Avery that.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins, what were you doing with Avery the day of Mr. Brackman's murder?
We spent all day looking for her phone because she thinks she left it at the fry shack the night before. She was really startled when she saw the mock trial team, so she did storm off to the bathroom, left her phone on the table, and then didn't pick it back up again when we left.
Where did you look for the phone?
All over the mall, all the stores we went to, retraced our steps. We went to the fry shack twice. Really anywhere we could have think of that her phone could possibly be.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Ma'am, you can go ahead and step down. Does the defense have any further witnesses they wish to call at this time?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Does the defense rest at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do both the defense and the prosecution close at this time and wish to make closing arguments?
We do.
All right.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Does the prosecution wish to make an closing argument?
We do.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
That will show him. Avery Becker, 2020. On March 6, 2020, a tragedy struck Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, ending his life and shaping the lives of those around him. On this day, intruder attempted to enter his house, alerted the Ring doorbell, and afraid Brackman armed himself with a knife and attempted to confront the intruder. The intruder panicked, struggled with Brackman, scuffed up the home, and ultimately Brackman wound up dead. We now know this intruder to be Avery Becker. Today I stand in front of you not only to prove that Avery Becker broke into Mr. Brackman's home out of revenge and anger, but in a fit of panic, killed him. At the start of the trial, you heard what we were going to prove. That Avery Becker had been at Mr. Brackman's home, intending on breaking it out of spite, then once confronted, panicked, stabbed Brackman, and left. As the prosecution, we carry the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And throughout this trial, we have demonstrated every single necessary element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Through our expert witnesses, we've demonstrated why Avery was in the location and vicinity she needed to be to commit the crime on the day in question. We found out from our other expert witness that the forensic evidence left on the scene indicates the defendant as the main perpetrator. And through text messages sent to another student, we've realized the idea that Avery had openly communicated that she was going to break into Brackman's home, and she did just that. In comparison, the defense's main expert witness had hypocrisy laced throughout their critiques of our credible expert witnesses. The singular alibi and only person able to clear Avery and make sure she was not at the crime scene frequently misspoke and continued to change her own testimony, proving herself entirely unreliable as a representative of the objective truth. And even the defendant herself admitted she was good at making up stories, and she agreed that she would have done anything to get back on the team. Their entire case hinges on the idea the phone was missing in the first place. Yet the only people who claim this, people that claim supposedly works out for. The other person to claim this, the defendant's best friend. A friend who claims she assuredly knows that the phone was lost as they went to search for it, yet also failed to have the knowledge of where the phone was when it was supposedly disappearing. The defense wants you to believe in the improbable. Yet here's what we do know. Avery's phone was at Mr. Brackman's home on the day of the murder. And it is beyond reasonable that Avery had never lost her phone in the first place. For these reasons, and proving all necessary parts of the crime and the indiscrepancies with the alternate narrative, I implore you to seek justice for Mr. Brackman and find a guilty verdict for Avery Becker. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Does the defense wish to proceed with their closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Your Honor, members of the jury opposing counsel. In this case, there was no phone, no files, and there can be no felony. Might I remind you that the prosecution has the entirety of burden of proof in this case. That means that they need to prove every single element of this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Today, the prosecution has failed to prove any element of this crime. The prosecution's case was saturated with incompetence, both in the evidence that they did collect and in the mounting evidence that they did not even consider. No phone, or should I say phones. Both Detective Markowitz and Mrs. Kuzak would lead you to believe that they're sure of the whereabouts of my client on March 6th. They want you to think that the cell tower data that they collected tells us everything that we need to know. This is simply not true. Cell towers aren't tracking devices. Phones don't always connect to the nearest tower. Besides, regardless of the path that Ms. Becker's phone took on that day, it was not in her possession. On the other hand, there are two phones that Detective Markowitz did know the location of. Alex Fuentes and Taylor Perkins' phones were not investigated in this case at all. Mr. Markowitz chose to hinge his entire case on screenshots sent to him by a teenager that anyone could have fabricated in Photoshop in under a minute. He could have authenticated this important conversation, but chose not to. Why? Because he was simply too lazy to investigate further. The prosecution didn't even bother to enter these integral texts into evidence today. This laziness is also apparent in the fact that Mr. Markowitz chose not to confirm nor deny Avery's alibi using Taylor Perkins' phone, an alibi he says he's not even aware of. Next, no files. And yet another example of the police department's gross incompetence, photos of the crime scene were corrupted and lost. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how can we say that this case is open and shut when its experts can't even keep track of its evidence? Finally, the felony. Today, Avery Becker is being falsely accused of second-degree burglary and murder in the first degree. The prosecution's story leaves too much room for doubt. We don't know if Brackman was alerted to the intruder. We don't know if the knife came from inside the home. We don't know if the assailant stabbed Brackman from the front or the back. You heard Detective Markowitz say he doesn't even know that Avery has an alibi, and we do not know where Avery was on March 6th. It's simple. We don't know who murdered Mackenzie Brackman. Here's what we do know. We know that the prosecution took the easy way out. They failed to look into any other suspects, including Blair Rollins, whose father, Mackenzie Brackman, sent to prison. Rollins was not at school on March 6th and seems to have disappeared into thin air since then. This, of course, did not stop Detective Markowitz from reminding us that Rollins lives within the exact same cell tower range as Avery Becker. We heard that the prosecution's only character witness admit over and over to being jealous of Avery Becker. Mr. Fuentes was the one who pointed Detective Markowitz to Avery using forged screenshots. Members of the jury, might I remind you that Mr. Fuentes was the last to see Avery's phone on the 5th and also knew her phone passcode. We know that the prosecution took the easy way out. They made assumptions across the board and failed as investigators. They spun a story based not on facts, but on the first suspect that they could find. Finally, we know that there's more than a reasonable doubt in this case. There's a sizable one. The evidence presented by the prosecution is fundamentally lacking in every way. Today, my co-counsel and I have shown that there was no phone, no files, and there can be no felony. Since the prosecution absolutely failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker committed second-degree burglary and murder in the first degree, you must find her not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Any rebuttal close from the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Again, the defense makes baseless accusations without any facts to prove any of the claims they're making. They claim that the screenshots were forged, yet no proof of that was ever obtained. They claimed we had never submitted them as evidence, yet we continued to explain why they had been submitted. They continued making assumptions against our expert witness, yet failed to realize the idea that he had never been provided with Miss Becker's alibi, as she had not committed to actually meeting with him. She had never had any knowledge or need to search the things that they claim he had never done, and he had not needed to. Again, they continue to make baseless accusations against, yet they themselves lack facts to do these. As I stated before, and as you heard Avery mention, she was good at spinning a yarn. She made up that she had not been the perpetrator. She made up that she had the phone. It was never confirmed that she even had the phone or it had ever been missing. Please don't let her fool you. Don't let her pull the wool over your eyes. And I implore you to hold her accountable today. And once again, I ask you to deliver a guilty verdict. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, we've concluded all the evidence. You guys did a great job. The scores are going to tally their scores. Mr. Hirsch, Ms. Greer, or Ms. Hendon, if you can just chat me and just say I'm finished when you finish your scoring. And while Mr. Hirsch, Ms. Greer, and Ms. Hendon score, I will talk to you folks a little bit. You guys did a great job. It's really difficult. I've had to do WebEx now for a year, and it's hard. It's really hard to handle hearings, trials, everything via video. And you guys are much more professional at it than me. So I can understand. Plus, you guys probably have to sit all day, don't you, doing schoolwork in front of a computer, and then you get here and now you have to do it for another 2 or 3 hours or 4 or 5 hours, and pretty soon you just can't see straight. I think my daughter, who's your guys' age, usually wears those blue light glasses when she is at school because of the amount of feedback that she gets. Ms. Hendon, are you done scoring?
I am, Your Honor.
All right. Did you want to go ahead and make a comment?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start. First off, you know, you guys were very impressive. I just right off the bat. I did the ones earlier and they were impressive, but you guys pretty well blew me away. I will start with that. I was very impressed with all the witnesses. It was obvious that they spent time with the witness statements and really got to know the characters. In addition, both the attorneys and the witnesses did a really good job dealing with hard questions. And the attorneys came up with some really good questions as far as, going after some of the conflicting statements that are in this particular case. And the witnesses did a good job challenging right back. And I think that speaks to both teams as far as how well both sides really prepared for this. Kudos to you for doing that. It was really nice to have the witnesses actually be witnesses instead of reading off of a paper. The directs were really good, the crosses just as well. I like the theme that went through as far as no phones, no files, no felony, because that's stuck in the head. Really good job laying foundation. Let's see. I think one thing though is that there was one point where it just seemed like the objections were getting to be a little bit too much. And at some point in time, I would suggest that a better strategy would be to prioritize what are the material areas and go after those instead of objecting constantly. The other thing is I think there were some objections that were cutting off the actual question And sometimes go ahead and let them finish the question, and then you can tell whether or not it's a question that's objectionable or not. It's just my suggestion, but I would say overall, very impressive. Congratulations on getting through this very, very long day, particularly since we're here at 8:15 at night and still going, but impressive, very impressive. Thank you very much for all your time and hard work.
Ms. Greer, are you finished tabulating?
Yes, Your Honor, I am.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Great job, guys. Very, very impressive. A lot of hard work shows that it has gone into this and that you guys have really put a lot of preparation into it. This was my second round as well. And the different facts and the facts that came out much deeper were really amazing because you guys got the entire thing and all the objections, everything was really on. I think everybody did a great job. You should be very proud of yourselves. And I'm sure it has been a long day. So I'll move it on to the judge.
All right. Mr. Hirsch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to applaud everybody. You know, I've been trying cases in this district since 1984, and I've seen a lot of cases that were not nearly as well presented as the work you all did today. So I congratulate you. I want to encourage you. I really loved it when you got away from your script or your outline and you just let your knowledge about the case flow. That's when you guys really you just shone. It was amazing. I mean, your scripts were good, your outlines were good, your pre-planned stuff was good, but when you got a little bit away from it, your creativity showed, your knowledge of the problem showed, and it was just unbelievable how good this round was. So I congratulate every one of you. Thank you for letting me enjoy this time. Judge, thanks for your hard work as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Just real quick, a couple things. I want to just explain to Ms. Blair kind of what went on about the Exhibit 14. And the first objection when it was started was the objection to, she was saying something about they told me the text would be okay. Understand the basis for that. It's not hearsay because it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. It's not necessarily okay. It just shows why she acted the way she acted. So it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. And then as far as admitting an exhibit, remember that's a photograph of a text message. So that exhibit needs to be admitted just like any other photograph. So it's got to be authenticated. Yes, this is the photograph of the text message that I received from the defendant and I sent to Mr. That's all that needs to be done. So I made it sound more complicated than it needed to be. So I'm sorry about that. You guys did a great job. There are a lot of details in this case and it's hard to hit everything. So focus on what you need to focus on the big things. Don't worry about the little stuff. And you'll do really, really well going forward. Just remember, and like I think was Ms. Hendon said, you know, get the objections to the important stuff. Don't worry about the little stuff. Because what happens is when you make an objection, everybody kind of pays more attention. And because they're paying more attention, you really want to make sure it's when you want them to pay attention, right? Not when you don't want them to pay attention. So remember that when you're deciding what objections to make. Good job, guys. It's really great to see all women. It really is.
Thank you all, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream now. We did receive all of your score sheets, so thank you so much for volunteering and helping with this. Ladies, thank you so much for all your hard work, and I just hope that you have a good time tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
Have a good day, guys, or have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Team B.